Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Eggs, the podcast. Today's special guest is Peter Murphy-Lewis. He is the founder and the man behind strategicpete.com. Tell us a little bit about what's going on, Peter. Thank you for coming and doing this.
Glad to be here, Ryan. I started doing fractional work, which means, 2 to 6 companies at a time hire me to help them build up their team or go to market. But my real entrepreneurial world started back in South America in 2007. I moved there from Kansas or slash via Boston and started a travel company, kind of got my marketing chops, spending my own money, and figured it out along the way. And now just help other people do the same.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, no, I love it. And I love your story too. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things here to cover, but so can we talk a little bit about, I guess, just kind of your trajectory, sort of what got you into this line of work in the first place?
I'm still figuring out what I want to do, Ryan. So the one thing that I left out of the intro that will help you understand I have no idea where I'm going is I've produced and hosted 3 documentaries in the last 12 months. And 13 months ago, I'd never done a documentary, and I've already done 2 more in 2026. So I'm figuring out how I'm trying to get there. I would say if I had to say one thing that had the biggest kind of impulse to understand where I am, it's probably that I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So my grandfather purchased a bank in 1970. My dad took over the bank in 1990, and I started working in the bank when I was 14. And so I've always been around conversations of people talking about marketing and sales. And we're talking about small towns. We're not talking about, New York banks. We're talking about banks in cities of 2,000 people where you know everybody's name. They bank with you because you know when you know who their godson is.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I love that. And there is a little bit of a charm to small worlds or small town stuff. But one thing that I really like about your trajectory, and I appreciate your transparency in it too, is we discovered early on in this podcast that I think there were a lot of people, maybe ourselves included at the time, that the expectation was that there's kind of a straight path in life, right? That you can sort of, get some knowledge and there's just this missing piece. But if you can get it, then like you can just kind of stay on this path. And what we found in talking to, more than 400 entrepreneurs and startup founders at this time is that everybody who's like successful in life or in business, it seems almost without fail that everybody is kind of unsure of what they're doing and the path is really windy and the path from A to Z, there's so many stops along the way that it would be really difficult for most people to plan this out. I look at people like my wife, and she wanted to be a teacher when she was a kid, and then she went to school to teach, and now she teaches. So like, pretty straight line, like a direct path for something like that. But for creative people, and I work in marketing and advertising as well. So for your story, for me, is very familiar. Here we are, or at least in my case, I'm mid 40s now, and I'm still just trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, what you said there makes me think of the podcast Founders, about the guy who just geeks out and just reads people's books over and over and over and takes tons of notes. I was listening to his podcast about a month ago on Elon Musk, and he said that he never wants his employees to be extremely confident and wrong at the same time. So he doesn't have any problem with his employees being wrong. They just never better be coming and be fully confident. So I always say I'm not very fully confident on anything, and I'm very comfortable being wrong. And that's pretty similar to kind of my path in life, what I'm trying to figure out right now.
Yeah, well, and it sounds like too, maybe you're similar to me in terms of like, I don't know, like you're always curious, and that leaves the door open to do whatever, right? So you're talking about documentaries and TV series, and I actually thought it was kind of, I mean, obviously I wasn't able to go back and catch some of your old TV appearances or whatever, but I mean, they look Spanish language. So here you are doing television and maybe a foreign language and like all this stuff, and it's and it would be one thing if you were from South America, but here you are, a guy from Kansas, and you're speaking Spanish well enough to perform on TV or in documentary form. And, but like, I don't know, that's the same as me. I mean, we have a small team in Spain, and I picked up some Spanish. I'm not good enough to be on TV just yet, but I speak some Spanish, and I draw and I illustrate. I mean, these posters behind me are things that I've drawn, and, and then like, I'll be off doing this, and I'm trying to run my agency, and then I'm off to, trying to start a business doing something else. And, and it's like, but I think that, I mean, while it can be a little bit like herding cats, I think, and, maybe for people who have a straighter path in life, maybe that's a little bit easier way to go. But I think maybe the gift and the curse of the creative person, and, whatever you're creative in, not necessarily just being a guy that can draw or whatever, but, if you're a creative business person or you're excited about life, like this is what happens. You get pulled in a lot of directions, and it's kind of okay, because I think if you pay attention to hustle culture and all this other stuff, I mean, maybe you'd get further faster if you focused, but you're
Mm.
definitely weaving a more, I don't know, complex and enjoyable life, I think.
And also more likely of, if you lean in and focus on one thing and you're wrong, well, one, you might not have the stamina to do a second wrong, or you might not have the ego to do a second wrong. But when I'm doing, 13 things at one time, let's say I'm putting 50% of my eggs in one basket. So that saves me 50% for the other 12 eggs, right? To play around with. And if one of them hits, good, I can give it more percentage of my focus or my revenue or my team type of thing. And I feel like it makes sense to me. It's just kind of like hedging your bets.
Yeah. Well, maybe this is a good caveat because this is something I've been talking about recently. I just got back from London. I went out there for a conference for small business or small agency owners who are trying to basically figure out how to navigate the pivot through AI and what's that going to do to creative agencies and things like that. And I've done a pretty decent job. I think I come from the era where, like, if you wanted to be on the internet during the early days, you had to learn how to build it. And so I'm, I guess, blessed in some sense that I'm just old enough to have lived through these technological revolutions where it's sort of, I guess, foundational to me to learn a lot about what's going on, right? So I spend a lot of time in AI and learning about the technologies and using the tools and all these things. And, so I found at this conference that as it relates to a lot of the other people who were there, I'm actually pretty far ahead in terms of like where our little creative shop might go one day.
Mm.
And but I know that you two also spend a lot of time in and around AI. You spend a lot of time in the marketing realm and stuff like that. So I wonder if you'd have a take on just what do you think the future is for creative and marketing shops with AI on the horizon?
Well, I've been having the same conversation internally, like where are we pivoting, right? There are things that AI does today, both for me and for my clients, that 2 years ago we charged for. Um, I don't know if I can predict where it's going. I think partially because I'm an optimist in general in life, but also an optimist with AI. I can tell you where I'm going, which is I'm using everything I can in AI, and then everything that I don't think AI can replicate or even do 80% of. And that's where I'm leaning into it, right? So, like brand, uh, legit content, not AI content, podcasts, documentaries, right? Like documentaries are a huge part of my revenue in the last 12 months, huge. And even I would say if it's 75% of my revenue in the last year, I would say in 2026, it's probably going to be 90%. And I'm just pulling information from the fact that I don't think AI can replace that. And people, when we're getting too much content coming in, right? Like you and I can 20x, maybe 200x the content that you and I did 5 years ago, we can do today with AI. That means that people also want more human interaction and more human connection, and that's what documentary has given me and brands.
Oh, I love that. I hadn't really thought of that. We had a guy on last week, this guy Logan Lyles, who was talking about webinars and using webinars in marketing, and it was sort of, but his logic was kind of the same, right? That this is a
Right.
human interaction. You're interacting with the person. Now, granted, you can do lots of trickery, right? You can do
Mm.
AI videos and overlays and voiceovers and all these kinds of things, but I kind of caught wind of this some years ago. I wrote this article called it was about technological saturation, and that there was sort of this drive for connectedness, right? And so the notion then was that everything all the way down to the tactile sensation of pressing a button has been reduced to a screen, right? We don't even need to click that thing anymore. And then you see all of a sudden the rise of these fidget spinners and all this dumb stuff. And then beard oil and craft beers and all these things start coming. And what that signaled to me anyway was that, yeah, the technology is awesome. It's obviously here to stay, and it's going to continue to grow. But there's something that's like sort of built into humans that we want: tactile sensations, real life relationships, in-person connection, whatever it is. There's something that if you don't have that in your life, that, you'll start to struggle. And I think for a lot of people, who went fully remote or whatever, this has been a problem for some of them. I've been a remote worker forever, and I spent a lot of time during COVID, for example, trying to teach people how to not be lonely while they were working from home, because
Mm.
for a lot of folks, especially if you're used to working in an office environment or something, you would start really missing human connection. And it's something that I think we kind of take for granted now. And I think that this world that you kind of painted a picture of, where AI starts to ramp up, we start to see, 10x, 100x, 1000x, million x the content. What comes to my mind is like one of these, futuristic apocalyptic horror type movies where you're in downtown Tokyo and everything is a screen, all the way down to the signs and the placards on the windows. Everything is just a video screen, and there's just just noise everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, to your point, when the world becomes so noisy, where you'll truly stand out is actually by taking a few steps back and just being human, I think.
Hmm. I mean, I think that's a good psychological approach, but I also think that it's good survival from an entrepreneurial, right? Like I feel what I heard there, Ryan, is that what has happened in the last 3 to 5 years, AI plus COVID, remote, and so forth, has created a pain point inside of us as consumers, as users, as clients, as customers that didn't exist 6 years ago, which is this tribal need for human connection and need to be understood. There's a whole realm of businesses right there to fill that need. As social media makes us more addicted to our screen, at some point somebody's going to have to come back, because we were humans before we had cell phones, and the humans, we needed connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if this is something that resonates with you or not, but like, so we found some years ago, both my boys are in Spanish immersion schools, or my oldest just graduated, but had been in Spanish immersion elementary school and junior high and high school. And so both of our boys speak Spanish pretty well. And in that period of time, we had 6 different interns, like teachers, who came over from Spain to live. They'd stay in our house and teach in the program. And so we've developed a lot of relationships with people in Spain and really come to love sort of, Spanish culture. One of the big things that was a huge takeaway for me after our first intern, um, I was, at the time, I was like, Mr. Entrepreneur, tuned in on Gary Vee, doing all the things I could do, hustling, doing all the thing. I was working for an agency at the time and then running mine at night. So I was literally working like 20 hours a day, just killing myself for the grind. Right. And when I had the first opportunity to go to Spain, it really changed everything for me, in just the sense that the value they put on human relationships.
Mm.
And I showed up there. I remember I was trying to be this cool American, right, and meet this new group of people. And so I showed up with my big fat watch and my Louis Vuitton, whatever, and my fancy shoes and all this stuff. And this group of people could not have cared at all about my cool watch. No questions. Oh, is that a whatever? Like nothing. Like they
Right.
couldn't have cared. And so, but they were really excited to meet me, and they wanted to learn about me, and they wanted to know about my family, and they wanted to know, about all these things. They didn't ask me about my business, not once. And for me, that, I guess, was so impactful, in the sense that at the time I didn't realize there was really another way to live. Like, I mean, I have family and stuff, and we had relationships and things here in the States, but I had kind of lost my way, in the sense that I was kind of going down this entrepreneurial, or what I thought was an entrepreneurial route. And what was actually happening is it was creating a distance between me and everybody else.
Mm.
And so this moment in Spain, even though it's kind of, I don't know, a dumb moment, like, I mean, lots of people probably would just recognize that people are great. For me, it was really impactful. And so, and I don't know if that's the same experience that you've run into. Obviously you've married somebody from South America. You've spent a lot of time in and around, Latin cultures and things like that. I wonder, is your perspective at all, and maybe it's different too, and this is stereotypical, but you're a Midwest guy, so, and a lot of family connection and relationship value in the Midwest also. But I wondered if you noticed that in South America, and if that sort of connection to people has steered you in one way or another as you've sort of evolved as a business person or a marketer.
100% dramatically so. That before and after experience that you mentioned in Spain started to happen. I had several before and after small experiences. I went to Mexico probably when I was 16 for a month. And then when I was in college, I went to Costa Rica to study Spanish when I was 18 and then 19. And then I went and studied my master's in South America when I was like 23. And at the age of 23, I remember finishing my first semester of my master's. I remember calling home to my family and saying, "Hey, I think you guys should come here for Christmas time and for the summer. I don't think I'm moving back to the U.S." And it's not that I like one more than the other. I love the US. I live in the US now. It's that Latin America made me such a fuller human being, more of a complete human being, because what I was missing as an American. And they would miss, and I would say that they missed the same amount of things in Latin America, there's things that they would pick up if they moved here. But the to put it into like a framework, I always say that one of the most impactful books in my life is The Five Languages of Love. And if you haven't read the book, it's really simple. There's 5 ways that we show people how we love them or appreciate them. And usually the way that we appreciate people is the same way that we want to be appreciated. Well, the way that I appreciate people is words of affirmation. And I would say in general, there's a large percentage of Americans, because we're goods with words, we're salespeople, we're communicators in general. It's kind of the way that we teach people. That's one of our strong suits. When Latin America, they are particularly great at quality time. And there is a love language, which means quality of time, which translates into being a listener, listening to people. And probably is very similar to Spain. And moving to Latin America, I realized one of the things that I was very weak at as a love language was quality time, was listening and being present, having my cell phone off, not having my notification watch on, nothing telling me on my Apple or my Garmin, nowhere needed to be. I went to dinner and I could be there for 5 hours or I could be there for an hour. There's not that birthday card where your son comes over from 5 till 7. There's just no restraints around time when you're with people. And that, when I was able to understand that and express that, uh, before and after has changed for me completely. And I think that's why I married a Latin American woman. So I would never, ever forget that. And we try to teach our son that as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's huge. And you make a really good point too, just about the meals, right? I mean, I don't know for sure in South America if it's the same, but like in Spain, they eat late. And like you say, there's no real value on like getting in and out. Like here, like, you know, hey, I'll set a reservation for dinner. And it's like, well, you have an hour and a half. So when you're done, get out because we need to turn that table. But, you know, we'll go to dinner in Spain and we'll be there 3 or 4 hours and, you know, nobody even bats an eye at it.
Right.
And it's not like the expectation is, well, you've got to keep ordering drinks or you've got to whatever. I mean, it's like literally you just hang out and sit and visit. And,
Yeah.
you know, but it gives you that time to get invested with people. And, you know, I even see it like with my kids here, you know, I mean, you, we eat dinner fast, you're in and out of the restaurant, everybody's on their phones during their meal, you know, whatever. And it's like, and you look around the restaurants and that's what the tables look like. They're just people on their phones, you know, sitting and doing whatever, you know, and you just don't see that in Spain. It's not that way. And, you know, so I really appreciate that. In fact, we have this slogan that we use on our website. So because like I say, Spain really changed our way. So when I came home, we sort of rebranded our agency into what we call a brand relationship consultancy. And the whole idea is that we're building relationships between our clients and their end users, you know, whether that's an internal audience or an external audience, whoever it is they're talking to, we want to build an authentic relationship with them. I spent a lot of years in real advertising, regular, you know, ad agency advertising. And I found that I don't like the manipulation. I don't want to trick people into buying my thing. Instead, I want you to have an authentic relationship with my company so that you want to work with us, right? And so, but that was a big shift for us. But we use this phrase that you've got to break bread to make bread. And the idea is, you know, you've got to spend time together, eating meals, having cups of coffee, doing whatever it is, if you really want to make money. Like this is how we do it. And so, but those little points for me have become such a big deal or such a big part of the way that I do things that I think it will actually end up, just to take it back to AI and all that stuff, I think that those kinds of things will end up being the superpower in the future. There's always going to be, you know, folks that are just going to chase the dollar and, you know, look for maximum ROI. And, you know, there's going to be a version of life that's that. But I think that for a lot of people, especially small business owners and folks that are maybe just getting started, who are chasing a passion or building a business because it's something they truly love, I think keeping that human factor in there and maybe not going full overboard on stuff is not a bad idea. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't be using AI in every facet of their life and all that stuff, but maybe it's maybe like you, I'm a little more optimistic, which is, you know, it's not the Skynet version of AI, but rather somehow AI making people better.
Hmm. I, I love that kind of breakdown. I translate this regularly to my son, who's 9, and I translate this to, you know, kind of entry level entrepreneurs who are thinking about the next gig, the next trend type of thing, whether it be AI. And you said something about being, you know, being human, being helpful. And I always tell my son, I said, if you are the most helpful person in the room every day when you go to third grade class, or you go to summer camp, or you go over to a friend's house, you're always going to have a job. You're always going to have friends. If you want a wife, you're always going to have a wife. If you're gay, you want a husband, you're going to have a husband. You're going to have neighbors. Everyone's going to be around you. Your parents aren't going to disown you. Your kids aren't going to disown you if you're the most helpful person in the room. And the way that I translate that over to business is, Ryan, you and I might be marketers, and we might chase the shiny object in the room. And this year or next year, you and I might make more money than every other marketer in those 2 years. But if you and I slow down and learn the fundamentals, which is helping people, right? Break bread. What did you say?
Yeah,
Break.
you got to break bread to make bread.
Yeah, break bread to make bed. And you just focus on being helpful, and instead of just trying to make money and trickery on the latest thing. The other 8 years, the person who knows how to make a house might make more money than the people who paid them to make a house. It's just figuring out the foundation when speaking to a 9-year-old, it's be the most helpful. When it's being a businessman, know how to build the house, and people are going to always need you.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is I think at the end of the day, like we're still just looking for relationships. And like I say, there will be people chasing money and doing all that kind of stuff. Like there always have been, there always will be. Like that'll be the goal for some people. And they're going to say, you know what? I don't need a relationship with you. Can you get me more clicks, or can you get me more whatever, maybe they're not looking for it. But I think by and large, having some kind of relationship with your client or your customer, whomever that is going to be more valuable than not having one, just like as a basic rule of thumb.
Hmm.
So let's pivot a little bit. And I know you spend a lot of time working with companies on helping develop strategies and helping them, overcome. Obviously we've broached the subject of, what are these companies going to do with AI? What are the most common challenges or the questions that you're seeing from companies now as they're trying to shape strategy for the future?
For my clients that are more entry level, it's like, what channel do I focus on? Is usually what 2 or 3 things should I do? Because most people come and they're trying to do 15 things and they do all of them poorly. For my more mature clients, right? So like, north of $20 million a year, it's usually around penetration deeper into the clients that they already have. And that's less about which channel, that's more about data, right? Like, which data should I pay attention to? And CRMs are confused. They don't know what to do with SEO today. They don't know what to do with ads. They don't know. It's a difference between data at the high end, and at the bottom it's which decision.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I guess fundamentally it's kind of the same problem, right? And it has to do maybe with scale and the amount of resources you can throw at a thing. So maybe at the beginning it's, do I need to be on all 5 social channels, or can I just be on Instagram? But maybe for somebody who's bigger and maybe a little more sophisticated in their marketing, then ultimately it's the same question though. It's like, where do we what channels do we chase? What data is valuable and what data isn't? And right now, you mentioned right now too, and I think you're right. There's this transition happening, and there's kind of this gold rush that I'm experiencing. And I don't know if you can back this up or if you've seen this too, but there was a period when the social networks started rising, and I was working in agency at that time. And so there was like, Twitter started getting popular and some of these other platforms started gaining popularity. And there was this like gold rush in the agencies where everybody was like running out and hiring some 14-year-old that knew how to run Twitter. They weren't marketers or strategic thinkers or any of that kind of thing. It was just, we need somebody that can run the platform. So they were making wild hiring decisions to bring in people who really didn't have any knowledge or any skill. They just knew how to run this tool. And so people just started throwing a lot of bad money at social media. And, I think over time that's become more sophisticated. Obviously, there are people who make whole careers out of this now. But I kind of see that with AI too. And so I feel like we're maybe starting to get over the hump a little bit. But for a little while there, every piece of software is bolting on AI. And really all it was doing was speeding up how quickly you could enter data or, whatever. It was kind of not doing anything. It was just kind of like, but I need it to say AI on the platform. And so as we're starting to, hopefully, I think you'll start to see some of these big AI companies will start to emerge to the top, and they'll become the Twitters and the Instagrams and the whatever of the future. But there's going to be a lot of them that are going away. So, like, as you're starting to help people, I guess the point I'm trying to make, I guess, is like, I feel like there's room for a lot of bad data because we can quickly make data. And so, but there's a lot of hallucination. There's a lot of flaws and problems in AI still. And so if people just take that and run with it, it could, maybe it'd work out great, but it seems like there's a lot of room for error. So are you experiencing, just sort of because of the pace at which things are moving, there's this burgeoning technology, it's revolutionary, game-changing technology, but everybody's just kind of crowbarring it into what they're doing? Like, are you seeing that it's actually impactful? Like, are you seeing a real increase where you're going, man, AI is really where it's at? Or
Hmm.
is it still, like you said before, kind of the fundamentals? Like, I mean, are you providing value? Is your messaging good? Maybe you can come up with 10x the creatives, but the strategy behind it is still sort of done the old fashioned way.
I see. I've never had this conversation, so some of these things might come out uh, a little
Oh,
bit
it's okay. And
confused.
we won't hold you to it either, because everything's moving so fast. How could you?
Yes, but what I see going on is that something similar that I'm doing internally. So I may have used AI 6 months ago or a year at every stage of my strategy, all the way to execution to part of it. Not entirely, but I used it for ideation. I used it for execution, and then I used it for analyzing data. Today, I would say that the majority of how I'm using AI is after I've ideated myself or with a strategist on my team, and then I use AI for the development of the strategy into what the content is, and then a human comes back in, and then the human is used along with AI when it's interpretation of data. So if I was going to translate that into American football, it's like I'm calling the play. We might use AI to determine, should I be going in the A slot or the B slot, or when the defense shifts to the right, should I have gone off the tackle type of thing. And then I'm going back to being a human, and how do you tackle, right? Like, and how do you wrap up? How do you push the person out of bounds? Where do you call timeout, depending on the time? AI is somewhere in between the ideation and the tackle point for me. I see it. I see that when we're working with ads. I see it with YouTube strategy. I see it with PR. Just to give you an example in marketing, so we in the last 18 months we've tripled down into earned media. So if you don't know what earned media means, it means you're pitching to journalists so that you can get backlinks. But we're not just doing an SEO backlink game. We're trying to get our name and our clients' names in big national media, because that helps out with AI as well. So we, at the beginning, we design what is our pitch going to be to these journalists every quarter. We then use AI tools to identify the journalists who are raising their hand saying, hey, I need this type of thing. And then a human comes in and does the actual writing, because journalists can pick up on AI. So I'm using AI in the middle for the identification, but on both sides, it's complete human.
Well, I think that raises an interesting point too, because I think, and this is something I've seen. My wife teaches in a junior high here, and teaches honors English, and so she has a lot of kids writing a lot of papers. And so this has been something that comes up a lot, right? Because now, theoretically, anyway, you could just prompt AI and have an essay, right? So, but one thing that kind of keeps bearing out is these kids, the few that do that, they often don't really even understand their topic, right? So they're not catching the failures of the AI. I can't remember exactly how this went, but there was one that was like, it was a kid writing a paper about Hamlet. And it just slipped in something that was like kind of a modern news story or something. But like, if you didn't know Hamlet and you just saw like some oligarch's name or something, you'd be like, well, I guess he's Shakespearean. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
And so there was this thing. But so I think, to kind of what you're saying here, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but it's like AI is a great tool. It's really powerful and it does a lot of things, but I think that there's still, at least at this point, there's like this human intervention that has to happen, where it's, you can, like, to your point, you used it to kind of fill in the middle gaps, but like, if you didn't have fundamental knowledge to begin with, it'd be pretty easy to run out a pretty shoddy strategy. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think where, back to, I don't know, maybe we're spending too much time defending humans today, but, it does seem like, if, at least at this stage in the game, that if you want to have something legitimate, you still kind of need this check in place. You still need somebody who can kind of keep an eye on that, and has the wherewithal as a strategist, and has spent time, with, marketing businesses and exiting companies and doing all the different things that, require tangible knowledge. And this is actually what I worry about the most, like for our kids, is, it'd be pretty easy to just kind of coast. And, you could fool your professors enough and you could do whatever enough to actually get all the way through school and not learn anything. So if you're not motivated, you could probably skate most of the way through. And so I really worry that because things have become so easy and frictionless to get on AI, that right now we're in this sweet spot where people like you and I with some experience are still necessary for these. But are there businesses, or are you experiencing companies that are running out who just, I don't want to spend the money with Peter this year. I'm just going to use my little AI co-pilot and have my executive assistant do the work. And then, coming back to you later and going, oh man, we really blew it. Like we just tried to have AI do this and it didn't work. Like, are you seeing any actual call back for humans yet? Or are we being replaced?
I've seen it in SEO, people who, pushed out 250 pieces of content on their blog in the last 9 months, and they thought that they were going to rank. And then I've seen it on social media, right? And I don't know if this is 100% true, Ryan, but I think it is. So I believe that a large percentage of the AI information that is being given to us is curated information that was already put out on SEO and blogs in the last 5 years. And I can tell you the quality of the majority of that content, it was pretty average. And what that means is if 9 out of 10 of us are using that AI strategy for go to market, you and I create the exact same company. Both you and I start a car wash in the exact same town. You on the east side, me on the west side. We both use AI. We're going to follow bad advice that came from SEO a couple years ago. And on top of it, you and I are going to follow the exact same strategy. So not only is one of us might not succeed, we're both going to fail because we're going to both do bad things. The one good thing that we both do, we're going to be doing at the exact same time. So there's like lack of creativity. Like there's no brand, there's no, everything comes off as like stale wafers, and that's not what humans want, right? Like I mean, there's a lot of smart people out there today who says, especially if you're in SaaS, I work with a lot of SaaS, software as a service. A lot of people say it's better to be different today than better. And I can tell you, even if AI is giving out great content, you and I are all doing the better thing. Whoever's different might win.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So this is kind of one of the theories I'm working on. So this isn't totally polished, but sort of in terms of like a philosophy for survival for creative agencies and marketers and stuff through sort of this AI revolution is, I think, exactly what you're just saying there, which is this idea that those who will survive will be the people with perspective. And so, or a point of view is maybe a better way to look at it. So like the stupid version of this that I keep spitting out is like, if you want to, if you're, let's say you're into Picasso, yes, you can make AI or Midjourney or whatever you want, create a Picasso-like thing, and you could have that in your house, and you might be very happy. But if you're truly into Picasso, you want a Picasso, right? So you're going to be at the art galleries, and you're going to be at the the auctions and the things like that, really chasing down a Picasso, just because it's Picasso, right? It doesn't really matter that it's cheaper or more expensive or whatever. So in that case, he had a perspective. Picasso is a guy. He created a genre. And if you want to be in that genre, then you seek out the person who's in that genre, right? And so I think for small creative agencies and people like this, marketers, et cetera, if you have a perspective, so to use your example, if you're different somehow, I mean, the advice can be the advice and the advice can be the same across the board. But if you can offer a true point of view or a different perspective, that's where you'll start to find power or energy. Is I think you're going to start finding those people who have a real perspective are going to be the ones that end up finding success in the end. And I think that, for marketers and maybe even young marketers who are starting up now in a super AI driven world, who think they can get really far really fast by just leveraging technology and not really being an expert in the space, that lack of point of view, I think, is what nips them in the bud later when the AI overlords are, at the back.
You can see this in real life before AI, right? You can see it in corporate America. Go look at any company that's doing somewhere between 10 and $50 million and go look at their work with us page, their careers page. It looks exactly the same in every simple company in the United States. And the marketing for all software companies, any company between 10 and $50 million, in my opinion, all of their landing pages, all of their demos, all of their pricing pages, all it's exactly the same. So if that, when you look at those pages and you're like, oh, that's horrible. Trust me, that's what we're doing if we're relying on AI. When I go do public speaking. As a marketer, I say the idea that we're discussing right now, every person inside of your HR team is going to be like, no, no one else is doing that. And then I say, every single one of your traditional marketers has been in corporate America for 10 years, but no, we can't do that. And why haven't our competitors done it? Well, trust me that there's a reason. Avoid that. If that resonates with you, then use AI differently than everyone who's like using it as a crutch.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think that would go for anything, right? Technology or education or whatever. Anytime you lean on something as a crutch, it tends to be a negative, not a positive. Even if the shorter term gain might be good, the longer term gain, I think, is going to be the problem. Can we talk a little bit about, so like in your experience too, I know you have broad experience across technology and different places like that. Are you seeing any place in particular where industries or sectors are maybe better positioned to benefit from things like AI versus other areas where maybe they're not so much?
I think two main things where I see the huge opportunities. One is brick and mortar, and that's mostly because their competitors haven't used anything with AI. Right? They're not using automations to talk to their customers. They're not using any of the marketing tools for like de-anonymizing somebody who's on your website and then doing outreach to touching those people before the person knocks on your door. And then the second one I think is anything with lots and lots of data. So I'm on the board of a bank, and it's really hard to interpret what data you should be using to make actions upon, whether it be sales or marketing. And the same thing is in insurance. The same thing is in, I'm trying to think of something. Oh, I mean, just like, for example, as a creator, a, 2 years ago, I had no idea what to do with my YouTube data. I could look at 5 to 10 things and give my clients some interesting advice, and I thought like I could analyze it in a way that I thought was helpful. Today, I just take that data into AI, and I can make a lot more nuanced. Um, words not strategy, but new ideas of new things to test. So that's where I see it. Like I have a client in the brick and mortar space, and we're using AI, and their competitors aren't. And then the second one is just with people with too much data.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, let's take a quick pivot for like a little bit more actionable stuff. I mean, we've been talking a lot of philosophy, and sorry to pick your brain on this stuff, even if it's not really where you want to live. Like, I just think it's really interesting. And you and I have a couple parallels in our background that I think makes us think alike. So I wanted to kind of pick on some of those things. But in our closing few minutes, can we talk a little bit about, I guess, just sort of like the plan to attack? You mentioned earlier that sometimes your customers are coming to you, and part of the problem is they just don't even know where to begin. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's somewhere we could talk, or maybe spend these last 5 or 10 minutes is just talking about where should people who are interested in growing their company using sort of a modern approach to marketing, and leveraging, whether that's leveraging AI or, what are the best things, maybe let's talk a little bit about just sort of how can we grow our small businesses in an effective way, leveraging marketing today?
There's two things I think of right away, and it goes back to a famous marketer that you mentioned at the beginning, Gary Vee. I'm dyslexic, so I'm not going to get his new book right, but it's something like Day-Attention. Have you read it yet, Ryan? His new
I
book.
haven't.
Okay, so I'm getting it wrong, but the premise of the book is the most valuable thing that you can do today as a marketer is get people's attention. So he calls it like day trading for people's attention. So finding the most inexpensive place for you to get the attention of your ideal customer, right? Where and that means your competitors. It could mean your competitors aren't there. It could mean that's where they all hang out, right? Like all of my clients hang out on LinkedIn, so I spend 75% of my time on LinkedIn. So think of the one channel that isn't 100% saturated where you can identify. And then the second thing is going back to basics. You and I've said this. You and I spent 20 minutes talking about basics, which is being the most helpful person in the room. So once you get their attention and you get their email, find out how you can turn them into super fans. There's a great blog out there, 1000 True Fans, that you can use in so many different ways. I'm currently consulting with 2 AI clients, and they don't want to spend money on ads until they have traction. I said, fantastic, I agree. Let's just fund one simple channel on one simple organic that we can get people's attention, get them into our email, and then I personally want to onboard them. I'm going to invite them to an onboarding call within 24 hours, and I'm going to talk to them, hear them, and I'm going to turn them into a super fan. And then they do free marketing. Those two things, I think that we forget about all the time, all the time.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And especially, I mean, that little human connection part that you just brought up. I think one of the misnomers or one of the things that people think are so great about technology is that, oh, well, now I don't have to get on the phone anymore. Now I don't have to bother doing this. Now I don't have to have a conversation. I'll just send an email. No problem. I sent out 10,000 emails today. I'm good. And it's funny how just, even in your own example, I mean, even with no marketing spend, really, just being willing to pick up the phone, you could really increase conversions or grow those true fans. And we bring up the 1,000 true fans thing all the time because I think, especially for a lot of small business people who are chasing sort of this hustle culture and stuff, which thank goodness seems to be tapering a little bit in popularity. I think that there was this idea for a long time that if you're going into business, you need to become Google, right? There's this runway where you need to just be the world's biggest company and you've got to scale, and it's all about scaling and growth and how do we get more customers through the door and blah, blah, blah. But I think there's also an argument to be made for the 1,000 true fans model, which is, here's 1,000 customers that you really help and they love you. And
Mm,
anything you put out, they're going to buy, and everything
mm,
that you promote to them, they're going to be interested in, and whatever. Like that 1,000 people is worth more to you in the long run than 10,000 cold emails.
yeah.
So I think it's a really interesting thing. But I think that metaphor, this notion of the 1,000 true fans, I think could actually be more aspirational than for a lot of people it is.
Yeah. I mean, just think of the small brands in your life, right? If we're talking and you're that entrepreneur that you feel like stuck, that you don't know what to focus on, like you identify, just think of the three small brands in your life that you love the most. There's a very good chance that one of them focuses on one great channel, does one great thing, and they make you really happy and turn you into a super fan. For me, my favorite SaaS product that I swear by all the time is Superhuman. Who in the world thought that they would pay $30 a month for an email tool? I do. And it's the most amazing tool. And it's mostly because they do one thing great. And my first and every single interaction with them, they turned me into a super fan. And I've told hundreds of people, and they don't pay $1 in marketing to me or affiliates, right? And then even go smaller. Don't think software. Think of your favorite coffee shop, or think of the place where you get your car repaired, right? Like for me right now, it's my son's school. My son's in a new school. I've told 300 people in the last month and a half why I love his school. I mean, and I'm just their super fan. They have no idea. It's that their principal and their secretary, the first time they interact with me, they have no idea. But all they did was get the basics, right? The same thing I taught my son: be the most helpful person in the room. And now they have this weirdo Peter talking on a business podcast to somebody in Salt Lake City about a grade school in Kansas.
Yeah. No, it's so funny. And it's really interesting how all that works, that really just sort of that human connection and people becoming your fan can actually be the most valuable thing. I mean, that's how social media started, right? It was you were producing value and people liked it. And so they came to see it, and then they'd hear about it from a friend and now they're in. And, that's how it grows. And really you could scale just about any business doing it that way. So it's funny how we lose track of that stuff where it's like, okay, well, I found this list of emails online. We'll just reach out to everybody. We'll see if anybody buys it. It's like, I mean, I think maybe the word is intentional, but being more intentional about what we're doing, I think is going to end up being the strategy that works in the future.
It's true.
Yeah, I love that. Well, cool, Peter. Well, we're starting to get a little towards the end here. Let's take a quick minute. Let's talk a little bit about how people can get in touch with you if they want to learn more about the work you do as a fractional CMO or a consultant or any other avenue, a documentarian,
Yeah.
any place people want to connect, and where the best place to find you online is.
Easiest place is LinkedIn. I believe that I am the only Peter Murphy Lewis on LinkedIn, so go connect with me. I don't reject any rejections, any connections, even the people who try to sell me things. I like to see their cold pitch. And if you're interested in what I do, you can go to my website, strategicpete.com. If you're into documentaries, go to your smart television. Our documentary, People Worth Caring About, just got accepted on every smart television in the United States. I filmed the documentary with my cell phone, and now you can find it on your Apple TV, your Amazon, your Hulu, your Samsung. And so that's why I'm doing 5 documentaries in the next year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and really inspiring. I think it's a good notion just to take it all the way full circle. For people who, maybe get caught up in whatever it is they're doing and they're putting off some of the things they'd love to do. Maybe it's make a film or maybe it's do some other creative outlet. That you can do that and that can be a part of your life, even if you think that you need to be Mr. Businessman or whatever, you have permission now to go do whatever it is you love. So cool. All right. Well, thanks so much, Peter. This has been awesome. Great getting to know you and all the best.
Thank you, man.
Absolutely. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes in the podcast this week and every week. And we'll see you guys next time.